Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. My wife and I had been dreaming of owning a boat for years. We both grew up around the water, and there was nothing more peaceful than being out on the open seas, just the two of us and the endless blue around us. After saving up for what felt like forever, we finally bought our dream boat, a modest but cozy 35-footer that we planned to take out fishing and camping as often as possible. We kept it docked at a local marina that had slips available for rent. The first few weeks of having our new boat were absolute bliss. We took her out almost every weekend, explored little islands, swam in hidden coves, and enjoyed the quiet serenity of evenings anchored under starry skies. It was everything we had hoped for. That is, until the Karens arrived. We were down at the docks one Saturday morning when a shiny SUV pulled up. An annoyed-looking blonde woman stepped out, wrinkling her nose at the slight smell of fish in the air. Trailing behind her were a man and three kids staring sullenly at their phones. The woman, who I'll call Karen, marched up to the dock manager. "I need a slip for our boat, preferably far away from all these smaller boats," she said, casting a dismissive glance over all the modest fishing boats and dinghies docked nearby. The dock manager quickly ushered them over to the vacant slip on the end of the very dock where our boat was. I could see the forced smile on his face as he dealt with this unpleasant woman. Her poor husband and kids looked miserable. Over the next few weekends, we had several run-ins with Karen and her family. They owned a massive yacht, the type that required crew members to operate it, and looked down on all the peasants in their little boats. Karen seemed to take particular offense to our boat, which she called an eyesore every time she saw it. "You need to get rid of that ugly thing. It's bringing down property values," she declared haughtily one day. Her entitled behavior was getting out of hand. She left trash all over the docks, blocked others from getting to their boats, and even called the police once, claiming we were threatening her family, when all we did was politely ask her to not let her kids run wild on the docks. The final straw came one morning when we arrived to find that someone had dumped a can of paint all over our boat. The previously pristine white hull was now smeared with garish orange paint. We immediately suspected Karen, though we had no proof. The dock manager revealed that she had been pressuring him to kick us out for weeks, claiming our dilapidated junk boat didn't belong there. That did it. After talking to the other marina patrons who Karen had been tormenting, we came up with a plan. Many of the patrons wanted to leave the marina because of how Karen ruined the previously peaceful and convivial atmosphere. So we proposed buying the marina from the owner, who was looking to retire soon anyway. He was thrilled at the prospect, especially since it meant kicking the Karens out. After securing financing through the bank, we became the proud new owners of the marina. Our first order of business was to send notices to all tenants that, effective immediately, their slips were going to be reassigned, except for Karen's family. The day we went to inform her that she needed to remove her boat permanently was one of the most satisfying moments ever. She looked at us in disbelief as we asked for her keys back. "You can't do this! We have a contract for our slip!" she sputtered angrily. "Actually, we can," I said calmly. "We own the marina now and have decided to go in a different direction. We'll be happy to refund your slip fees for the remainder of the year." The look on her face was priceless as the reality set in that she was dealing with the new owners. She tried threats, pleas, apologies, anything to get us to change our minds, but we held firm. Within a week, that obnoxious yacht was finally gone, and we began renovations to make the marina an even more charming destination for responsible boat owners. My wife and I eventually moved onto our boat full-time, living the dream that Karen had tried so hard to destroy. The sense of justice felt sweeter than even the salty sea air. We sipped cocktails on the deck as we watched the sunset, finally at peace on our little slice of paradise. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This one is a double government employee event, and what you should know is if you get the attention of a government employee and make them angry, they will make your life a living hell. Sorry, this is a long one. The setup is that I was working for a local county government in the permitting department that handled drainage and floodplain enforcement. I received a complaint from a homeowner, nice guy, who lived next door to a house that was part of an incorporated village. Not a nice guy. The nice guy lived in an unincorporated portion of the county, and hence the call to me as an agent of the county. I drove out to the site to investigate and discovered some interesting facts. The permitting agent for the village allowed the incorporated homeowner to fill his lot, affecting the drainage, which caused the unincorporated lot to flood every time there was anything more than light rain. The nice guy indicated that there was some tension between him and the not a nice guy, and part of the issue was that the nice guy and his partner were a gay couple. This raised a red flag for me, but in trying to be impartial, I took the information and some photos for the file and indicated that I would contact the village to find a resolution. I wrote a letter and then called the village inspector, Jackwagon, to discuss. I was told by Jackwagon that the village could do as it pleased, and that I could do nothing to stop not a nice guy from doing as they pleased, as it was approved by the village. There was then a comment about those types of people, the gay couple, making complaints just to cause trouble. I was now on the case, and it was time to make sure everything done on the incorporated lot was 100% legal. At this point, the game certainly was now on, because if there is one thing that grinds my gears, it is bullying. I went back out and spoke to the nice guy to let them know what I was up to, and also that I was not going to let this slide. I then started investigating the elevations on the two lots and what fill had been placed on the incorporated lot. The not a nice guy came out and started getting belligerent about my presence and ongoing investigation. He incorrectly stated that I did not have jurisdiction over his lot and that he would be calling the police. I patiently listened and then pulled out my two-way radio and requested that the home base dispatch both a village and a county police unit to the location. I then indicated that since there was a regulatory floodplain on his lot, I did in fact have jurisdiction, and that I would be exercising my right to determine the impact of his fill activities upon that floodplain. Both of the police units showed up, and I let them know what was going on. They were both appropriately agitated to have to waste their time, and let not a nice guy know that I was within my authority to proceed with the investigation. A little while later, while I was measuring things, Jackwagon showed up. He started berating me about harassing the village resident and threatening to call my boss and file a complaint and so forth. I invited him to do so, quoting which parts of the code he should indicate I was violating. I was using marking paint to show the limits of the floodplain for the photos for the file. And what do you know? Jackwagon's shoe got painted when he tried to stop me. Obviously, he was even angrier, as was the homeowner, due to very bright orange paint in the grass in his yard. I pointed out I had done the same on the neighboring lots, but they just kept complaining. It was actually marking chalk that comes off pretty easily. Interestingly, I found two really wrong things on Not a Nice Guy's lot. 1, there was fill placed in the floodplain, and 2, a garden shed was built on the fill and partially within the floodplain. Both are a big no-no and are actually against federal law. So the course of action had 2 parts. 1, make the incorporated homeowner remove the fill and shed from the floodplain, and 2, let the nice guy place fill on their lot outside of the floodplain to counteract the fill remaining on Not a Nice Guy's lot outside of the floodplain. I also told the nice guy it would be a good idea to run a field tile on their side to drain the water that would inevitably pond up between the two lots when it rained. Predictably, Not a Nice Guy and Jackwagon got super angry when I sent the letter out that there were violations that either had to be corrected, remove fill and shed, or apply for a revision of the floodplain with the Army Corps of Engineers. Good luck with that. This then led to a meeting at the county office with Not a Nice Guy, Jackwagon, my supervisor, and myself. Quickly, things went to 11, and there was yelling by Jackwagon about abuse of power, etc. The department head came into the conference room and told them both they were wrong and that they should leave peacefully and comply or face the consequences, fines. The best part was that Not a Nice Guy had to apply for a permit, and guess who was the one to review and approve it? That's right, yours truly. Now, I was following the letter of the law, but you have to know that poor government workers are underpaid and overworked. Strangely, the permit for the nice guy was almost immediately approved, while Not a Nice Guy had to have a very thorough review to ensure it was correct. You could make a case I was abusing my power, but I can assure you that the timing for their review was well within acceptable limits. Also, how could I be held to account that they misfiled 3 times before they finally got it right? Generally, if you behaved like a civil human and came to the office, we would help you get things done properly so the permit would go through the first time. But Not a Nice Guy decided he could do it all on his own, so it took him 3 tries. Had he come to the office, I would have given him the same service as others, but he decided to take the hard route, and therefore I didn't give a single inch when it came to the submission being perfectly correct. Ultimately, the situation was resolved, but it took a lot more effort than it should have. The moral of the story: don't be an entitled homophobic jerk. The next one is a petty revenge story. It only just happened, and I need to vent. I play GTA with a group of friends. They are not people I know in real life, but they're cool. We're all between the ages of 25 and 50, and there are about 10 of us in total. We do group missions, heists, and stuff like that. It's pretty rad. I'm the only girl, mind you. This comes up later. It's relevant to say that we have two rules. Stay on the mic for the missions, and no blocking or muting people in our crew because it's rude or whatever. I don't know. I think it's kinda dumb, to be honest. But, whatever, I like having money in the game, and this is how I do that. I usually tolerate whatever happens in chat, even if it's annoying, but I reached my limit. Recently, we had a new guy join us. He's new to the game, too. Day 1, he's messing up missions. I offered to give him training because I'm being a team player. When it was just us on, I took him around the map and showed him around Los Santos. While showing him the Mount Chiliad mysteries, he used a racial slur that didn't vibe well with me. I asked him gently to knock that off. He called me a snowflake, which is comical if you know who I am and what I'm about. I just told him I find the word jarring, and I would have stopped if the shoe were on the other foot. The weirdo only doubled down that I was a pussy for being offended. I blocked him and was told the next day to unblock him if I wanted to run missions with the crew. Only because I like money and I don't want to be asked to leave the crew, I unblocked him. He said he was sorry for offending me. We all played together most of the night, and he did it again. The rest of the guys asked him to knock it off with that word, but he said it yet again a short time later, and the head of the crew was about to kick him. However, instead, I PM'd everyone but the racist to mute me for about 2 minutes. Once everyone else had muted my mic, I blared my air horn into it. He called me a whore and blocked me. He was promptly told to unblock me or get booted from the crew. Before his official ban today, he was complaining that I might have given him hearing damage. He's threatened to sue me and called our entire crew cucks and simps for taking my side over his, because I'm the only girl. Oh well, to the people taking up for the racist, it's not the look you think it is. People out there can see you defending bad people, and it really is a terrible look to put out there into the universe. You're better than that. Or to paraphrase my favorite show, this is just a Reddit post. You really should relax. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So I'm Mark, and for the past 5 years I've been working at this mid-sized tech company. It's been great, or at least it was, until 6 months ago when we got a new HR manager, Susan. Now, Susan is the kind of person who loves rules a bit too much. She came in with this idea to revolutionize the workplace, but all she did was implement a bunch of unnecessary and strict policies. The one that really got under everyone's skin was her new attendance policy. It stated that if anyone was even a minute late more than 3 times in a month, they'd face immediate suspension without pay. No excuses, no exceptions. This was crazy, considering we're all seasoned professionals, not school kids. But Susan was adamant, and the policy was enforced to the letter. Now, I'm usually very punctual, but life happens, right? Just my luck, I ended up being late 3 times in 1 month. The first was because of a massive traffic jam, the second was due to a power outage that killed my alarm, and the third, well, I overslept. Each time I was barely 5 minutes late, but Susan didn't care. She slapped me with a suspension notice. I was fuming, but then I remembered something important. Our employee handbook. I'd read that thing cover to cover when I first started, and something about the suspension policy stood out to me. I dug up my copy and found the section I was looking for. The policy stated that suspended employees must leave company premises immediately and are not allowed to engage in any work-related activities during their suspension. A plan started to form in my head. You see, at that time, I was in the middle of a critical project for a major client. It was a huge deal for the company, and I was the lead developer. Without me, the project would grind to a halt. So, I decided to follow Susan's policy to the letter. The next day, I walked into Susan's office and handed her the suspension notice, along with a printed copy of the employee handbook's suspension policy. I told her, as per the company policy, I will be leaving the premises immediately and will not partake in any work-related activities during my suspension, including the Johnson Project. The color drained from her face. "You can't just leave the Johnson Project," she exclaimed. But I just shrugged and said, "Company policy, Susan. I'm sure you wouldn't want me to break the rules." I gathered my things and left the office. The fallout was immediate. The project team was in disarray without me, and the client was getting antsy about the missed deadlines. The CEO himself called me 2 days into my suspension, begging me to come back. I explained that I was merely following company policy, as enforced by Susan. Long story short, the CEO had to intervene. My suspension was lifted and I was back at work the next day. The best part? Susan's ridiculous policies were all reviewed and mostly scrapped. She's still with the company, but let's just say her enthusiasm for rulemaking has significantly diminished. So there you have it, folks. Sometimes following the rules a little too closely can be the best form of rebellion, and always, always know your employee handbook. The next one is an entitled people story. So, Saturday night, the missus and I were lying in bed trying to go to sleep when I heard some noise from the back door. The storm door opened and slammed shut. I'm not fully asleep yet, so I put on the pants and shirt I can find and grab my trusty shotgun. We moved to the mountainside, and most of the area is still wooded. Living in such conditions, wild animals are an issue. We have bears, coyotes, raccoons, and bobcats, to name a few. As I'm moving to the back door, I hear a window break in the back garage. I look out and see someone breaking into my garage. I scream for the wife to call the sheriff's office. Around here, cops doesn't work well for break-ins. We are connected with a couple of counties, and it gets confusing for them. We get a quicker response by calling them directly. I'm now in go mode, thinking some meth head is trying to score some tools for quick cash. I got out of the house and noticed this person's truck still running. I did the only thing I could think of and took the key out of the truck, putting it in my pocket. I waited for the deputies to show up. It took them 20 minutes to show up. One was a state police officer, and the other was a local sheriff's deputy who were doing radar 10 miles up the road. My wife and I know them both. With my gun in hand, I told them someone was in the garage and I haven't approached it yet. But here's the key to the perp's truck. They went in with guns drawn and dealt with the situation. The dude was passed out on an old bench seat for an old truck I have by the tool bench. They woke him up and arrested him with little to no issues, other than him screaming profanity at them. They told me that I can press charges and to come in on Monday to file the paperwork. He's not getting out anytime soon since, on top of his breaking in, he's being charged with a DUI. Yesterday, I spent the day traveling, trying to fix the window this broke since no stores that are open on Sunday in my local area. While in my travels, I'm fuming at the fact that I'm having to do this repair on a piece of junk door from the 70s. My wife was telling me to maybe let him go with a warning, but I'm having none of it. So this morning I went to the sheriff's office. The same deputy was there who arrested the perpetrator, so I asked him how the ride with the dude was. This is the version the officer gave me. Officer, why did you break into the garage? Perp, I was trying to get my stuff back, but someone changed the lock. Officer, you know they purchased that place from Kevin 2 years ago, right? Perp, what? That doesn't give them the right to change the lock without telling me. Officer, yeah, they can. You haven't been in that house for like 4 years, and I was the one who got you out of that house because you beat the hell out of your old lady. That's twice I get to arrest you on the same property. Perp, but he shouldn't be entitled to change the locks, though. Where else am I supposed to go? A little backstory on the property. We purchased it from Kevin, who's a school board member, and gave us a decent deal on the property. He had the property as a rental for his nephew for a few years. When his nephew started walking in his dad's footsteps by getting drunk and beating his girlfriend at the time, he evicted him from the property 2 years before we purchased it. When he evicted him, he emptied the contents of the garage as all scrap metal. He found that out Sunday morning when his uncle paid him a visit in jail. Kevin had other renters on the property after. He sold it to us because he didn't want the responsibility of it anymore. He's being charged with trespassing, criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, driving under the influence, and property damage of less than $500. The next one is an entitled parent story. Over the week, my husband and I went on a camping trip before the summer season, with its glorious warm weather, was officially over. We weren't at home and had no cell reception where we were. We left on Thursday, September 7th, and returned on Monday, September 11th. While we were away, my cousin left my niece, still strapped to her car seat, outside my house door on Friday, September 8th, and sent me some text messages. Remember, I had no cell reception where I was camping. I would never have known while I was gone. I saw the missed messages after I returned home. It wasn't a request to ask if I could help her. It was simply a message notifying me that she left my niece in front of my door along with a bag with her stuff for the weekend. She did not ask me beforehand if I could help her babysit. There was no possible way for me to know. Even if I knew, I would have still declined unless it was a medical emergency in the family, and they had no other choice. I live in a rural area where everyone is on 30-acre plots of land, so no one knew my niece was there. I had no clue. The neighbors had no clue. My niece was literally abandoned in front of my door until Saturday noon, when my parents came by to drop off my parcels that were delivered to their house. That's when they saw my niece. My parents called my aunt and had her come pick her up. I can only assume that my parents, my aunt, and my grandmother scolded my cousin for leaving my niece at my door. When I got home, all I saw was the initial text message telling me that my niece was dropped off at my place. Then a string of very rude text messages and voice messages from my cousin calling me irresponsible for leaving my niece outside and endangering her. Because what if the coyotes in my area attacked the helpless infant? I'm just so frustrated. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. and he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.